Hello, my name's Frostley and welcome to the video. For any of you who watched the last episode, you might remember that I said I would phone Jerome after he insulted me in his voicemail at the start of last episode. So I'm going to do that phone call right now and you can listen in and see how we get on.
Hello.
Hello Jerome, how are you doing?
I am good, just got off the phone to Ainsley Harriott.
Wow, what did he want?
He was asking for front row tickets to UFC 253. I said yes as long as he lets me have a go on Ready Steady Cook.
I'm not sure he presents Ready Steady Cook anymore.
Well, he told me he could make it happen, so watch this space. I'm hoping to pull out my spag bol recipe.
Right. Moving on, I noticed that there's been some tension between us recently, and I'm not sure whether you're aware, but I actually heard you call me a bastard in your voicemail you sent to me.
Whoops, I did not mean to send that, although it was an accurate assessment of your character.
That is not very professional.
I don't care, you have a weird face, and there's nothing worse than a weird face. I am bored of talking to you, so I am going to put the phone down.
Well, Jerome is one complex character. Start off talking about Ainsley Harriott, you think it's going well, and then he just, out of nowhere, Randy Orton style, turns on you and becomes really rude. He is really difficult to work with at the moment and it is getting me down. I can only think of one possible way that would cheer me up, and that would be if you liked the video, subscribe to my content, because that really helps me out. Do you see what I did there? Gained your sympathy and then manipulated you into giving me an extra subscriber. That's what we do on this channel. All very moral. Seriously though, there is some bad news. It is that Holly Holm has decided to retire from fighting. She won her last fight against Aspen Ladd, so she has knocked off one of my prospects in the bantamweight division, which is a shame. But I can see why she's made the decision. She's never going to match that moment against Ronda Rousey, and she's had lots of title shots since and never quite managed to do it. So we're just going to have to get on without her. And we do have an exciting card coming up. It is in Russia, headlined by Volkov versus Dos Santos. So let's get right into it. So we are here in what is a really stacked card in Russia. Also going to be a challenge for me pronunciation wise, so we're going to have to put up with that. But we have got a really exciting main event as we've mentioned, but also Ivanov versus Olenek, is that how you pronounce it, as the co-main event. Olenek, of course, fought all over Russia before and then came into UFC and has done pretty well. Absolute veteran with incredible amount of fights really, submission specialist. And then Ivanov, quite a good prospect actually, only 2-2 in UFC, but before that he was quite dominant in the fights he fought before UFC. We've got Pereira versus Shelikof, and this is kind of a dream matchup in terms of excitement, because Pereira, if you've ever watched him before, he does all sorts of flips while he's fighting. A bit ridiculous really, sometimes to his detriment. And then Shelikof is known for his Kung Fu background and just really exciting fighter, lots of interesting kicks. So both of these guys should put on a really good show. Also got Allovski against Sergey Pavlovich, who's a big heavyweight prospect in Russia. And then another up-and-coming fighter in Russia who's just making his way into the top 25 in the middleweight is Magomedov. So yeah, he's had a good run of six fights without a loss. Is that 6 fights? It is 6 fights. And some big names in there he's beat as well. So we are going to get into the card. First fight is actually quite an interesting one really, maybe a little bit lower down on the card than it should be, considering both these guys quite high up the flyweight rankings. Asker was originally fighting in ACB, was a champion there. He came to the UFC, drew his first fight, then won his second one. But he is quite an exciting fighter to watch and should be an interesting fight here against Kara France, who is also kind of an up-and-coming fighter. He's 4-1 so far in the UFC. Both of them have a pretty good start in the UFC, and I think, so he's 8th flyweight in UFC and 11th flyweight in UFC, so they're both reasonably high up the rankings. Of course, it's not quite as competitive division. And Kara France has got the win, so the Russian crowd are not happy with the start, but he's got the win by decision. Great result for him. So next fight, not quite as loaded in terms of talent, I don't think, but Alan, I'm just going to call him Alan, is 0-2. He's from Macedonia. Recently got knocked out in the first round, 14 seconds against John Phillips, the Welshman, of course. And then he's fighting a Russian fighter that is has one loss in his first fight against Carl Robinson. Can he get off? One of them get off to the start in UFC? He can, and Allen has came off his knockout loss to knock out his opponent in the first round, early in the first round as well. So that's a really good comeback for him. Next, we got Rick Glenn against Arman. And Arman, 23 years of age, 1-1 in the UFC so far. Although that first fight, very tough fight against Makhachev, and then Oliver Meerschaert, I think that's how you pronounce his name, was a reasonably big name. So he has got a big good win there, especially considering he's 23 years old. Against Glenn, who's 3-3 in the UFC. It's not too bad. And he has managed to get another win, Arman. So maybe someone to watch there. Only 23, and he's managed to get a unanimous decision win against Glenn. Next, we got Magomedov, not the Magomedov, his brother, Khabib's brother, against Staropoli. Khabib's brother, Magomedov, is 0-1, so he lost his first fight in UFC. Had some success in PFL, not huge success, but some success before. And then he's fighting a fighter who's also 0-1 in UFC so far. Oh no, he's not. He's 2-1 in UFC. This was wrong. So he's done alright so far. Just lost his last fight. And then Magomedov has got the win. Send the home crowd happy. Not send them home, they're not leaving yet. To push on to the next fight, so they're still happy. It's decent, decision. It's fine. Probably grinded it out in a similar way to what Khabib does, I'd imagine. Now we get Alcantara against Movsa Evelev. Oh, that's definitely not right. But he is an unbeaten fighter from Russia in the bantamweight division. Won his first two fights in UFC, and Alcantara, of course, is veteran in UFC. He's fought for a long time, going through a little bit of a rough patch with his last 4 fights. He's lost 3 of them. So it'd be interesting to see if he does manage to rebound against someone who's quite an up-and-coming fighter. And he doesn't manage to rebound. That's a huge win for Movsa there. And it's rated as great. 3rd round TKO. Excellent. So a few prospects coming through that I keep my eye on. Russia is full of lots of talent, and that's why you can see in real life UFC are kind of putting some more events over in Russia. So next fight, we've got Pennington against Yana. Okay, Yana, I believe, fought for the belt. Fought for the belt against Cyborg back in 2 years ago. She did lose. And then Pennington, who's been around for a long time in the UFC, also fought for the belt at one point against Nunes. Both of them lost. So both reasonably big names in the bantamweight division. Let's see how it goes. And Yana has won, which is a big win. That's a very big win for her. And she's now, it was a knockout. So it was a big knockout in the 3rd round. Fighters rated as good. That should shoot up the rankings a bit towards maybe even the top 5. Not far off. So into the main card, we have got Amari Akhmedov against Gerald. Gerald, experienced fighter. Last fight he beat Darren Wynn. He's a kind of prospect coming through the UFC at the moment, wrestler. And he has kind of an okay record. Kind of lost to most of the top competition he's faced. And he's against a fighter who looks really exciting and maybe will be put up against higher competition next fight, because he probably should be, really. We should have looked at that next time. But hopefully he does get the win here and then push on. He is only coming in as nearly even, so it's not actually that big a favourite. And he has actually lost. He's lost. So Gerald has beaten him in the 2nd round via rear naked choke. Okay, so now we're on to Arlovski, who of course lots of you would have heard of, ex-heavyweight champion in the UFC, against Sergey Pavlovich. As I said, big prospect coming through. Arlovski's kind of the opposite. Veteran, fought for a long time. He is struggling in those last few fights though. Was knocked out against Rosenstruck. So let's see how this one goes. Pavlovich has got the win, which is what I'd want, because it's good to see a younger fighter kind of coming through. And it was rated as good, and 2nd round TKO, so quite a convincing win as well. And Arlovski has decided to retire, which is fair enough. He has been fighting for a long time. Nice for him to retire relatively near his home country of Belarus in Russia. So now we've got the fight that I'm hoping will be a really exciting one. Pereira versus how did I pronounce that before? Shelikof. I feel like I nailed it. And as I said, both these guys Really exciting fighters. Let's see how it goes. And the King of Kung Fu, Shelikof, has won in the second round via TKO strikes. Fight was rated as good. Hoped for a little bit higher than that, but not bad. And now we're now going to go into the co-main event, which is where we're seeing high up in the heavyweight division, or relatively high up. Ivanov, 10th in the heavyweight division. Recently lost to Derek Lewis, but does have wins over Ben Rothwell and Taitavasa. And then he's against Alexei, who has fought quite a lot, but did get a recent win against Maurice Green. Before that, a couple of losses. Let's see how it goes. And he has won. Alexei, pumping the crowd up for the main event, has won via submission in classic style of his. And the fight was rated as decent. He's got to be close to retirement. He's 43 years of age, but he's not decided to, even in his hometown, his home country. So we're now into the main event, and that is Dos Santos versus Volkov. This one is quite an important one for the heavyweight division. Dos Santos, of course, big name. He has lost the last couple of fights, starting to see signs that maybe he's not quite what he was before, even on the feet. And he's fighting Volkov, who is coming off. He beat Greg Hardy, which everyone expected him to do. Before that Derek Lewis loss was, he dominated most of the fight and really was in control. And if he won that, he probably would have got a title shot. So he is definitely a contender in this division if he does kind of keep up the form he showed before that Derek Lewis loss. So I'm hoping to see Volkov win, really, just because you want a new prospect coming through. But maybe Dos Santos is only 36 years of age, so maybe he could have a resurgence. You never know. So both fighters meet in the centre. Dos Santos misses a right cross that leaves him wide open to a counter. Volkov comes in with a left jab and a kick to the body that gets parried. Both fighters step in to strike. Dos Santos is left wide open after a missed right hook to the ribs and gets countered with a pair of jabs that are followed by a leg kick that misses. Both fighters move in and engage. Dos Santos misses with a big right hand, allowing Volkov to counter with a left jab and a right hand that lands. And Dos Santos immediately covers up and tries to retreat, and I think he's dazed. Dos Santos can't cover up well enough and gets clocked with a right hand to the side of the head and goes down hard. It's a knockdown. Volkov quickly pounces, looking to rain down punches on the stunned Dos Santos, and Volkov continues to pound away, landing several great shots that rock Dos Santos. He continues to pound away but doesn't do much damage, and Volkov blocks an attempt to pull guard from Dos Santos. Volkov unloads with right hands but doesn't do a great deal of damage. Dos Santos tries to move to guard but Volkov doesn't allow it. We're now into the halfway point. Volkov fires off some rights but Dos Santos isn't troubled by them. Dos Santos tries to pull guard on Volkov but doesn't get anywhere with the attempt. Volkov fires away with punches but Dos Santos doesn't take any undue damage. Volkov blocks Dos Santos as he tries to transition to guard. Volkov fires away with punches but Dos Santos doesn't take any undue damage. Volkov blocks Dos Santos as he tries to transition to guard. The referee stands them up. The two combatants meet in the centre and start to strike. Volkov lands a left hook. Dos Santos lands a left jab and also hits a good right hand. The two fighters exchange. Dos Santos dodges a right hand and counterattacks with a jab and a left to the body. And round one has expired. So that is a huge round for Volkov. That knockdown early on doesn't manage to quite finish him off though, which he might regret later on. Let's see. This is a 5-round fight. The two fighters engage with shots, but neither can land anything significant. Two fighters continue to engage. Dos Santos misses a right hand, putting him off balance and allowing Volkov to attack with a stinging right hand high kick. Dos Santos is on rubbery legs all of a sudden. That shot must have rattled him. Volkov tries to capitalise with a massive right hand, but misses. Both strikers step in to strike. Volkov avoids a right hand to the body and counters with a brace of jabs that are followed with a left kick that narrowly misses his target. Volkov is still moving well, but he's definitely breathing a bit deeper now, so it looks like he's missed his chance again, Volkov. The two combatants meet in the centre and start to strike. Volkov dodges a right hand and counterattacks with a left jab and a right cross that just misses. The two fighters come forward and engage. Dos Santos misses a jab but lands a low kick. Volkov scores a glancing blow with a right head kick. An exchange of strikes happens but nothing much happens, and the two fighters come forward and engage. Volkov hits a left jab but doesn't connect with the right hand. Dos Santos doesn't connect with a left jab but nails a right cross. Taking a full gulp of breath, Dos Santos is showing he's tiring. The two combatants meet in the centre and start to strike. Volkov slips past the right hook attempt and attacks with a vicious right cross, and it is a knockout. Dos Santos is down and out. Dominating victory from Volkov. Two knockdowns and the knockout at the end. That is a very good showing from Volkov. Fight was only rated as decent, but in his home country, Volkov gets the win, which is huge for him in the heavyweight division. And we do have a new prospect coming through, which is exciting. So we are going to now get on to the next card, which is another fight card we've got. And it is headlined by a very exciting fight, Ortega versus Korean Zombie. So let's get right into that. Before we do get into the card, there is some news that had just popped up as I was continuing through the save. It is that, spectacularly, and probably the least likely person you'd ever think that actually would, but Nate Diaz has tested positive for TRT, so PEDs, performance enhancing drugs. It's unbelievable considering how vocal he is against it, but it's happened. So he's getting a suspension for, I assume, a year. Yep, a year-long suspension, which is a shame because he's just coming off a win against Robbie Lawler, which is now a no contest. It is what it is. We're just going to move on and get into the card now, but obviously a big blow for my plans with Nate Diaz. It's time for another exciting fight card. Another really stacked card with Brian Ortega and Korean Zombie as the headliner. Korean Zombie always puts on incredible fights. Then co-main event should be another thrilling one with Yusuf, prospect coming through, 5-0 so far in the UFC, in the featherweight division, fighting Darren Elkins, well known for his comeback wins, struggled a little bit in his last few fights. It'll be interesting to see if he does manage to knock off Yusuf's winning streak so far in the UFC. Got Ben Rothwell on the card against the Lima, Qatar against Emmett, Ian Heinisch against Brad Tavares, and also in the headline in the prelims is a debut for Jiri. Not going to try and pronounce the surname. No, I'm not going to try. Nearly tried there, but I know I'm just going to slaughter it. Who's come from Rising and dominated in Rising, and is only 26 years of age, so he should be a really interesting prospect. And he's facing Khalil Roundtree, which hopefully will be a fairly easy start to his time in UFC, but we have to see how it goes. So, first on the prelims, we got Freitas against Mina. Freitas is 1-1 in UFC so far, lost his last fight by split decision, and then he's fighting Mina, who is 0-1, lost his first fight in the UFC, Grant Dawson. So let's see how it goes. And Geraldo de Freitas has won in the first round. Fight was rated as great. Submission, good way to get the card started. Next fight, we got Liana Jojo against Eubanks. Eubanks, of course, fought in The Ultimate Fighter, and lost her last couple of fights though, so she's not doing too great at the moment. Really needs to win. And Jojo has last two fights as well, and that's her first two fights in the UFC. See how it goes. And Jojo has won first win in the UFC, which is brilliant for her. And the fight was rated as fantastic, so it's got the crowd pumped up. Submission, Americana in the third round. Well done, excellent. Looks like it's a likely fight of the night. Oh, and Eubanks has decided to retire. She's only 35 years of age. Guess 3 losses in a row pro record. Would now be 4 wins, 5 losses, I guess. So maybe she just had enough of not doing quite as well as she wanted. Fair enough. It's not really a big loss. Okay, so Koster against Gomes, next fight. Gomes is lost his first 2 fights in UFC, came in as unbeaten, but lost his first 2 fights. And what's his name? Koster is 1-1 in the UFC so far. Let's see how it goes. And Gomes has won. It is TKO in the second round. Fight rated is good. Next fight we've got is Charles Byrd. It's Charles Byrd. I'm sure it's Charles Byrd against Serrano. His black and white photo because I couldn't find anything else online. If you're wondering, Serrano undefeated so far in the UFC, 2-0. In our first card on this save, he did get that knockout win against Trevor Smith, and he also had a knockout win before that, so it's potentially could get another knockout win here. And last couple of fights have been difficult for Byrd. He's lost his last 2, so let's see how it goes. And Serrano has won again via another knockout in the second round via punch. Great fight apparently, so that's brilliant. We've got 3 knockout wins in a row for Serrano, undefeated so far. It looks like an exciting prospect. Next we got is Mike Rodriguez against Safarov. Mike Rodriguez, okay record in the UFC. He did lose his last fight. This last one of them was a no contest. Why is this a no contest? Doesn't say. Okay. Oh no, it says draw. I'm not sure. That fight says a no contest there, but I'm not sure. And then 1 win, 3 losses for Safarov. So neither of these guys particularly great. And Safarov has got the win here. Move on swiftly. So we get into the bigger fights now. Roundtree against Jiri. As I said, Jiri, real prospect coming through. He is big favourite for this. First fight in the UFC. Dominated and rising. Lots of knockout wins. Let's see how it goes. And he has won in this one. And it is another knockout in the second round. Fight rate is good. Brilliant way to get his name out there. Make a statement on the big stage of the UFC. So, now Ian Heinisch against Brad Tavares. It's a really exciting fight to kick off the main card because Brad Tavares, kind of a mainstay in around the top 20, top 15 in the middleweight rankings, but more recently has lost his last couple. And Ian Heinisch looked like an exciting kind of prospect coming through, but he has lost his last couple of fights and he's desperately needing a win now, really. That isn't correct, by the way. There's 1 win, 2 losses. I don't know why it says that. But let's see how this goes. And Heinisch has won. He's won by a unanimous decision. And it was rated as good. So that's good to get his career back on track. Tavares looking like he's kind of dropping down the rankings, so he needs to sort that out soon. Okay, he's got Jojo. And then next we've got Calvin Kattar against Josh Emmett. Calvin Kattar is coming off that loss against the Beat. He headlined the card. Always puts on a good show, and he's against Josh Emmett, who also puts on good shows a lot, and he is coming off 2 wins, often knocks out his opponents, so it'll be interesting to see how this one ends up. And Calvin Kattar does win, and he knocks out Josh Emmett in the first round. Fight rate is good. That is a really big statement from Kattar. There is lots of fights from high up rankings in this card, especially for a fight card, for a fight night, sorry. So next, Ben Rothwell against Lima. Ben Rothwell, of course, UFC veteran. Last fight he did win against Stefan Struve. When he came back into the UFC, kind of made a return, didn't he? I know he didn't. There wasn't as big gap as I thought. But he... oh no, there was a gap between this two. Yeah, I thought there was. So when he lost to Dos Santos, he had a bit of a gap, but didn't quite kind of come back to emphatically as you'd hope by losing his first 2 fights. But he has just beat Stefan Struve. And he's fighting against Lima, who kind of is one of every fight he wins, he loses. Not too bad. He recently lost to Struve. Let's see how this one goes. And De Lima does get the win in what is a underdog win. And the fight was rated as good. It was TKO in the first round as well. So dominating win, which is interesting. And Ben Rothwell's looking like he's never going to get back to those heights he did just before he fought Dos Santos. Now we're into the co-main event. Elkins against Yusuf. Yusuf's who I want to see win here. Elkins, exciting fighter, but he's kind of had his time and he's lost his last 3. Whereas Yusuf, up and coming, 27 years of age. And as I said, he's on a big win streak. So let's see how this goes. In the featherweight division, Yusuf does get the win, which is brilliant. Unanimous decision. Fight was rated as average, not the most exciting fight, so it maybe didn't get his rating quite up as much as I want, but it will put him up into the rankings and probably in about the top 15 now. Okay, so now it is the main event. It's Ortega, who's coming off his loss against Max Holloway, which seems a long time ago now, and it was a long time ago actually. It was about 1.5 years. He's had a long layoff, and he's facing Korean Zombie, who comes off that big win against Frankie Edgar. And before that, he's pretty much not every win he has, he seems to knock out his opponent in some sort of spectacular way. Of course, that Yair Rodriguez fight, he was in control and winning the fight, but then Yair Rodriguez spectacular elbow knocked him out. So potentially the winner here getting a title shot. Don't know if I'm not going to quite label it a number 1 contender fight, but it's potentially is. I think if Korean Zombie wins, I'm likely to, just because he's a very exciting fighter. But let's see. So, round 1 begins. 2 fighters touch gloves. Ortega appeared to be going to try and get the close, but Korean Zombie took the initiative first. Korean Zombie hits a left hand, but misses with a vicious right. Korean Zombie lands a jab and then scores with a right cross. Korean Zombie lands a jab and then hits Ortega with a straight right. Coming forward, Ortega is willing to take some hits if it means getting close to grapple. Korean Zombie throws a quick punch but doesn't hit. Ortega seizes the chance and grabs Korean into the clinch. Korean Zombie into the clinch. Ortega tries to use a trip takedown, and he gets the takedown, which is not good news for Korean Zombie at all. Ortega looks like he might be trying to go for the Von Flue choke already, but Korean Zombie managed to stop it happening. And now Ortega takes the back and tries to sweep Korean Zombie, and now he's got the rear naked choke in, and he manages to apply it 2 minutes into the fight. A huge win for Brian Ortega via submission. And, I mean, you've just got to say that's really impressive from Ortega, because he's coming off a big layoff, and he came in with a lot of hype against Max Holloway. He had a bad beating, but he's come back. He's beaten Korean Zombie in spectacular fashion. Maybe he does deserve that title shot against Volkanovski. We'll have to see. Oh no, Volkanovski just lost to Holloway actually. We're going to do the rematch first between Holloway and Volkanovski, and then we'll see what happens there. Maybe the winner faces Ortega. Maybe not, but he's definitely, he's either getting the title shot in his next fight or one more fight and then gets his title shot and gets another title shot back, because that is an emphatic win. Shame for Korean Zombie, but that's the nature of fighting, and he is more known for his stand-up, and Ortega is excellent at jiu-jitsu, so it was always going to be a strength for him. So that is going to be it for today's video, guys. Like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff. We do have, in the next episode, Kamaru Usman versus Masvidal for the welterweight belt. Should be a really interesting one. Hopefully see you there. Have a good one.